Before we do, if you have a cell phone, can you please turn it off or put it to silent? Big thank you to our sponsors, Glenn and Susan Dickus, whose contributions. Some of you may remember Jonathan from his past performances as Ichabod Crane and Ebenezer Scrooge. And we're delighted to have him return to us to celebrate this nation's 250th anniversary. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan Kruk.
Greetings, salutations. It's an honor to be with you here in Orange County to help celebrate the 250th anniversary of the uniting of those colonies into these states here in America. Why, if you were out in Orange County, California, you'd be thinking, whoa, man, was it surfing that they invented 250 years ago? Things that happened here shaped the new nation and continue to be of significance. I'll begin, however, with a story of a song to lead us into certain reasons why rebellion, going against something many considered to be blasphemy, happened here in Orange County and in New York. This little song. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la. On the banks of the Hudson River, during the 7 Years' War, the first war to go worldwide, round here 'twas known as the French-Indian War, for the French were coming into various parts of North America, hoping to secure, the ability to make things like this, a beaver skin tri-corned hat. They were fur traders and beyond. But beyond the borders were colonists from Great Britain and many other places seeking to do what prominently happened round here for the beginning of Orange County in 1683, and that was, of course, farming. Well, the doctor sat at a place called Fort Craylo, or Fort Crow, as it was said by the Dutch. And there, whilst he sat, he noted a sloop sailing up the river, and disembarking, he clapped his eyes upon a rather motley militia. But they marched along, all proud, even with their stockings falling down, their breeches held up by mere rope, their doublets doubling off, and their frock coats, they were more patchwork than material. But the doctor noted they had feathers in their hat and marched along as if they were dressed in the latest fashion of the day, macaroni style. Why, macaroni, it was 6-inch high heels, tight silk stockings, and even tighter breeches, a floral coat and jacket, hair piled up some 6 inches, white powder on the cheeks, and that was just the men. The women looked like a wedding cake by today's standards. Their hair sometimes reached 2 feet, and you would have a little wooden ship or a bird nest to adorn it. That was macaroni style, not some doodle putting a feather into his cap. Well, when the doctor saw this, he thought, "Haw! What will the other officers think when they see these fellows from Connecticut here to support us in New York? Ha ha! No doubt they'll have a laugh. Well, I will enhance that laughter by introducing my officers to the Connecticut militia by singing a little song. I'll change the words to a popular tune I knew whilst I was in London. Something like, Lucy Locket had a pocket filled with lots of Yes, that's it. Now I'll just have to change the words a bit. Oh, speaking of words, thought the doctor, I now am thinking upon the names that the Dutch settlers in New York have for those interlopers sneaking in from Connecticut. Why, often, when they would come round and about, why, the Dutch would hold their noses and say, Yankees, for they would reek of pungent cheese. If anyone would like to know how pungent was the cheese, you're welcome to come and sniff my stockings. Thus, they would say to the English from Connecticut, "Ah, Yankees." Now, if you say Yankees 5 times fast, what do you get?
Yankees.
Yes, but don't tell Aaron Judge that his name for his team is Stinky Cheese. He's, I understand, 6'7" and carries a great stick in his hand. Yea, Yankees or Yankees. And these fellows didn't seem to be very smart. And someone, according to the Dutch, who wasn't very smart was a doodle. It meant all they were good for would be to gather up dead wood. Thus, there was only dead wood squiggling in their brains. So the doctor thought, Yankee Doodle went to Albany. Yankee Doodle went to Warwick. Well, I understand later in the war, Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne did, but no, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Why, how would these fellows, these colonists, travel? Oh, they're like children. The king has to send his army to protect them. Children ride ponies. Ah, there it is, thought the doctor. Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony. He stuck a feather in his hat and called it. Did you say lasagna? Indeed. And thus, on the banks of our Hudson River, the song Yankee Doodle meant to tease, to torment American colonists, 'twas born. And it grew, especially after the British won against the French here in North America. The king then issued some edicts. He said, I require that the North American colonies replenish our treasury with certain taxes. And the colonists replied in kind, Yea, we understand we pay fewer taxes than people do in Great Britain. Why, we all have colonial legislatures. Why, we will designate our legislatures to provide taxes to replenish the treasury out of gratitude for defeating the French. No, said the king. You are like children. We have to be the ones to determine what you will pay taxes upon, whether it's tea or paper or sugar, molasses, or anything else we don't think of. You will pay taxes upon it. What? Why, we have no representation in Parliament, and yet that will mean we have no say on the taxation. We object to that. And others cry, that's tyranny! Indeed. And when those taxes began to get imposed, why, there were many who refused to pay them. Why, some, not only up in Boston, but in New York City and in a place called Fishkill across the river, rather than pay tax on the tea, they tossed it into the ocean and the river. And this outraged the king. Thus he sent troops, especially up in Boston. And, the troops had a special kind of immunity. Why, they could come up to your home and say, by the powers granted to us by His Majesty King George III, we, your protectors, will quarter ourselves in your premises. Care for us and care for your king. And why, they would then sleep in your bed and eat you out of your sustenance. That's what it says in the Declaration of Independence. And this, it stirred things up. Why, not only in Boston, but here in Orange County and down in New York and all about the 13 colonies. Rebellion was in the taverns, from here to Smith's Clove. People saying, why, we'd be better off without a king, imposing taxes on us without any say, quartering soldiers in our premises, ignoring our legislatures. Why, it's tyranny! Tyranny? Why, we can't have a land ruled without a king or a queen. It would be blasphemy. The king protects us. He protected us from the French, and we have the Spanish, the Portuguese, even the Swedish, the Dutch, the indigenous folk. Why, we need the king, and we need England with whom we can trade. You know what some are saying from the pulpits? Why, they say, if you hear calls for liberty, independence, you know what it really is? Mob rule. Why, the place will fall apart without the king and his army and trade, and then the mob, the leaders of that mob will come in and they'll buy up our properties for next to nothing. Why, if you hear cries for liberty and independence, why, know this, it's nothing but a step into a scorpion's nest. And I'll drink to that, long live the king. And others would say, long live liberty and independence. And on went the debate. And the song, Yankee Doodle, proved a way to torment those wanting, well, as they were described, a scorpion's nest of mob rule. Why, the song made fun of the leadership of this rebellion. Why, they sang, Yankee Doodle went to town for to buy a fire log, but we will tar and feather him, likewise we will John Hancock. Tar and feathering, it sounds rather poetic, but it was a truly cruel punishment. You might have third-degree burns and die from that treatment. And in the song they tormented even George Washington, singing, and there rode General Washington upon a snow-white charger. Why, he looked as big as all outdoors and thought that he was larger. The colonists began to come back. They sang, Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony. And then they went on to sing, Father and I went down to camp, along with Captain Gooding, and there we saw the men and boys, thick as hasty pudding. Now, hasty pudding, it's like oatmeal or porridge. You know, when you first start to make it, it's rather thin like gruel. But put a little heat on it, stir it up, and soon it thickens. And led by the lights up in Boston of John Hancock, John and Samuel Adams, in New York by the likes of Isaac Sears and Alexander McDougall, things began to stir up and thicken. And then there was a shot heard round the world, and around here, people began to take up arms in a cause for liberty and independence. The Declaration of Independence was read in various towns and counties like Orange. Why, approved of it in their local legislatures. But for the first 2 years, General George Washington, in spite of having dedicated and loyal fighters and worthy commanders, lost almost every battle they fought. Why, if it hadn't been for the godsend of a thunderstorm and fog, why, his army would have been captured on Long Island. And he moved up through our Hudson Valley. And then finally, after 2 years of fighting, not long after a big battle occurred along the shores of the Hudson here in our Orange County, the Battle for the Hudson Highlands, why, it was part of a campaign set forth by Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, who said, Now listen, all ye, take heed. I have a 3-pronged attack. I will have an army come down from Canada into the Adirondacks along Lake Champlain and Lake George. And we will also have Generals Howe and General Clinton with their armies come up Hudson's River. And then we'll have Barry St. Leger, a fine fighting Irish colonel. He'll come in through the Mohawk Valley with Canadians and Indians, and we will all meet in Albany, and there we will set down our arms and lift up our mugs and celebrate to the end of this bloody rebellion. Down with the rascals! Oh, rascals. If you called someone a rascal in those days, you were destined to duel. There was only one insult worse than rascal, and that was to be called a puppy. And there you'd have to duel right on the spot. But that's how Burgoyne felt about these rebels, as they and all were called. Well, he hadn't counted on the ingenuity, the tenacity of those American forces. One of their commanders, though at a distance, General Schuyler, had ordered to fall trees, take up bridges, put any kind of obstacle you may in the way. And, led by the likes of General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold, many obstacles were laid. And they had a special help, especially when they got near a place called Stillwater in Saratoga. There appeared a patriot from Poland. Oh yea, the cause attracted many from around the world. Thaddeus Kosciuszko. And he set out certain redoubts when he noted that the terrain would trap the British here and their Hessians there. And thus he set these redoubts and had the various militia and continentals perched from various high points. And there was kind of a standoff. And Benedict Arnold, who was a determined fellow, why, he almost took over Canada. Had it not been for a bleak winter, he would have succeeded. He managed to get the army to escape from the approaching Burgoyne by building out of green wood a kind of navy, and they went right across Lake Champlain and eluded through various cat and mouse tactics the redcoats and their navy out on Lake George. So he was ready to fight. But Gates said, "You, sir, are going to wait until I give the order. We're of the same rank. No, my commission came before yours, and therefore I outrank you, and the Continental Congress has approved of that. You are confined to your tent." Well, that did not stop Benedict Arnold, whom Washington described as his fightingest general. Like a son was he. Well, that son of a bee, if you will, slipped open the back of his tent, slipped out, and ran down to join with Generals Learned and Poor, who were from, like Arnold, Connecticut. And he managed to not only rally the troops to fight, but they fought nobly and hard from a perch provided for them by Thaddeus Kosciuszko, and fired down upon the redcoats and the Hessians. And when the men got, well, a little bit shy when they saw those Hessians coming forward with their bayonets, they feared they might be granted what was called Hessian's Quarter, where if you were just a simple farm boy and you'd never seen a Hessian over 6 feet tall with a big bearskin helmet on his head with a brass plate, a chin strap with his mustache and long queue, making you think he had 2 mouths so he could go out and eat children, and you dropped your weapon, I surrender. What would you get? Ah! A jab in the belly with the bayonet. So fearing all of that, Burgoyne saw this Benedict Arnold out in the field, riding around, leading his men. Cover the flank! Watch over there! Form up! Bring those cannons! Fire! And he was in smoke and gunpowder and screams and cries and bullets piercing his coat, and then, ha! He was shot in the thigh. His horse shot and mortally wounded, and it fell atop of him. But Benedict Arnold continued to call out orders and managed to get his men to surround Burgoyne and his army. Thus Burgoyne, oh dear, I suppose I'm going to have to, surrender. And indeed he did. And Horatio Gates was formerly in the British regular army, so he invited Burgoyne, and they sat down at a table that autumn with a little repast set out of wine and cheese and dried meats and some fruits of the land. And Gates said, "Oh, don't you worry, I'll give you a fine report. Really, there was little that you could do other than what you did." But meanwhile, "Sawbones! Get away!" cried Benedict Arnold, as the surgeon threatened to amputate his bullet-ridden left leg. But the men, the farmers, the blacksmiths, the apothecaries, the teachers, the lawyers, the merchants who'd come to fight, they were looking at these red-coated soldiers and their cousins from Germany, the Hessians, in their green coats Well, they were still Yankee Doodles, these American feathers in their hat, calling it macaroni. But now they saw this fine fighting force having to come before and surrender their firelocks. Look at these fellas. They're surrendering to us. A bunch of Yankee Doodles. Yeah, that's what they called us, Yankee Doodles. And you know when they'd sing the song, you know the part where they sing, "With the girls be handy"? They thought they were going to steal away our girlfriends and wives. Fie upon them. They got beat by Yankee Doodles. Hey, you know what we should do? What? We ought to sing the song back at them. Yeah. Show them we're proud Yankee Doodles. And thus, they lifted their voice in that victory here in New York up at Saratoga and sang that song proud. And my friends, would you join me in singing that? It's nice, a little anthem. We'll just sing a little verse there, and then we can move on to some more dangerous tales, that of hangings and murder and mayhem that occurred here in Orange County. So let's sing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music, watch your step, and with the girls be handy. And now say, huzzah for Yankee Doodle! Huzzah! That's the moxie that made up the militias who brought about the liberty and independence we still enjoy today. Thanks for listening to that little tale there and singing along. The Scourge of the Ramapos. Claudius Smith, my son, you will die with your boots on? Oh, mother, nay, I won't. I'm going to fight for the king up in Orange County where father's settled. Why, they're gonna need a big fella like me to lead them against those rascal rebels. I'll take care of them. Oh, listen, son, I know you. You're just out to make trouble, that's all it is. You're making trouble. Why, if you really wanted to help, why didn't you sign on to fight in a loyalist regiment? I don't want to be commanded by no farmer or lawyer or landowner like a Livingston or a Rensselaer. I'd rather do it myself. I'm gonna be a cowboy. What's that? Well, we're charged to go out and find rebels and take from them their cows and anything else we can get. Bring it down to New York City, and then the generals there of the king not only will thank us, but will pay us for robbing. Think about that, mother. That's what I'm gonna do. Oh, fie upon you, but I pray too that you'll not die with your boots on. And off went Claudius Smith from his hometown in Smithtown, Long Island, here to Orange County. Now there were mostly farms, and many in the taverns again debated about what side should we be on. And sometimes Smith would listen, and on occasion, if he found a man who was perhaps just sitting there wondering what to do, he would come up to him and say, you there, why don't you come fight with me? We're fighting for the king. And they'd say, oh, well, perhaps. But Smith would leer down at them, and by many accounts, 'twas said he stood 7 feet tall. So, would you have confronted someone like that? No. And many got literally by Smith pressed into service. They would maraud round these little country lanes, would pass by the quilt work of the landscape where the farms had dotted the land. Many places here were still impenetrable wildernesses, and hereabout, on various sides, from the center, from the Hudson Highlands down close to New Jersey, were rolling, rolling hills, and many little crevices and crags where one might hide. And in one just down the road a piece from here, old Claudius Smith would hide out. And after he went by and found a farmer whose cows were not well kept or horses were kind of meandering too far in the pasture, he'd grab 'em, steal 'em, bring 'em down to the redcoats, sell 'em, and pocket the silver. And for good measure, he would often go up to the house and rap on the door and say, "By the powers granted us by the king, you bloody rabble rascal, open up that door!" And he would lift up the door and walk in, and most people in those times now were almost painfully aware of the presence of the likes of cowboys like Claudius Smith. And they would put under the floorboards in a little metal box their silver, their gold, their marriage certificate, the deed to their land, maybe their old Bible. And Smith would be aware of that. But rather than bothering himself with tearing up floorboards, he would grab the owner of the house and have his men throw a noose around his neck. They would then take the rope and throw it over a beam, and Smith would with one hand pull the rope and under the floorboards, right where my feet were. And then they would be out of their silver, their gold. Why, old man Woodhall up near Cornwall, he lost 2 pistols, bayonets, silver buckles from his shoe, plenty of linen, and spinning wool. Another fellow, up the road from there, near New Windsor, why, he lost 20 guineas or 20 pieces of silver there. This was how Smith operated. And he would hide up in these cloves, one especially a little bit south of here, above a place now called Slotsburg or Slotsburg as it was known. And there, Smith had many eyes watching, and even though there were some colonial militias who came marching up to try to stop Smith, he would always manage to chase them off, and often would go off with their horses. So, on this went. Now, there were some, however, who claimed that Claudius Smith was, he's like a Robin Hood. Why, he's helped out some farm people here and there, meaning he didn't rob them, or maybe he came by and bought them a bit of beer or bread in a tavern. But some still insisted, he's the Robin Hood of the king rounded about here in Orange County. Now, this Robin Hood was at once approached by a young woman who said, "My father, he's being held by the rebels over at West Point. Might there be a way in which you could free him from that imprisonment, Mr. Claudius Smith?" And she curtsied, and he grabbed her by the chin and kissed her right on the head and said, "I'll get your father free. Give me your shoe buckles. They're made of silver." "Oh, my buckles." Oh, that was quite a valuable commodity, especially among the poorer folk in these parts, and most were poorer folk, but she gladly